There's some questions?
Yes. Today is Shivaratri, and if you can tell us some of the glories of Lord Shiva as you feel inspired, we would appreciate that.
Shri Shivaratri ki jai. In the Brahma Samhita, the position of Shiva is described that comparing Krishna or Vishnu to milk, I think Shiram Vishesha Yoga, I forget that sloka. Someone knows it? Dinasara, you know it? Yeah. Anyway, I'm saying like milk transforms into yogurt. So yogurt has the properties of milk. It cannot transform back into milk, but it has its own unique position. So sometimes Srila Guru Maharaj will say, Balaram is the first other than Krishna. There's Krishna, then first outward Balaram, but he says other. So sometimes Shiva is also described as other than Krishna, but meaning very similar, same but different. And who, as Balaram, can sometimes oppose Krishna in their divine play. He can differ with Krishna, but it's all divine and out of service necessity. He's the elder brother, Krishna's the younger brother. One of Krishna's name, Ramanuja, the Anuja of Rama, the little brother of Rama. So they can have some differences, and this enhances their divine play. So also Mahadev Shiva, as other than Krishna, but similar, he can also play that role out of service necessity. So in the Bhagavatam, described, it says, Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu. Of all whom we may consider Vaishnav, he's the best. He's in the superlative position. But out of service necessity, he may sometimes have to play a role in opposition. We hear in the Puranas him saying, Mayavaram asachastram prachtam bodham uchite mayeva kapitam devi kalo brahmana rupina. In the Kali Yuga, I preach Mayavad. He incarnates as Shankaracharya, Adi Shankar, the great Acharya of South India. But he's preaching Mayavad philosophy, Prachtanam Bodha Mujite, which is covered Buddhism. So he's doing this to delude the people. He also says sometimes in offering boons to his disciples, one of his names is Ashutosh. Tosh means, Ashu means quickly, easily, Toshanam, satisfied, pleased. So this discount brings many less than qualified people to him, and they're seeking some boon, and sometimes that's bringing them in conflict with Krishna and bringing him in conflict with Krishna. So in some instances, he's lamenting, why do I have to do this type of seva? You know, preach Mayavad philosophy and delude people. Sometimes my foolish followers, they get some boon. They want to rise up against the Lord. Why do I have to do this type of seva? An example being Brikasura, here in the Bhagavatam. He's doing intense austerities to try and please Lord Shiva. He's cutting his flesh and offering it into the fire. This is really like Atmanivedanam in the mode of ignorance to the extreme. And at last, he's going to behead himself, offer himself into the fire. Then Shiva comes to offer him some kind of benediction, whatever he desires. And he says, I want a benediction. Whoever I will touch with my finger, their head will crack. Right? Very unusual request. And they'll drop dead. That's what I want. I just tap them on the head. Like there's the Bengali expression, mati chana, means crack-brained. They use for somebody who's crazy. But this is like literally, he wants to crack their skull with the touch of his finger. Mahadev said, okay. And Brikasura said, well, I need to try it to see if it works. And he's going to touch Shiva's head. And Shiva's running from him, and they're running in the subtle worlds, you know, through the upper planetary systems, in the spiritual realm, for the necessity of the pastime. And Shiva, at last, he's taking shelter at the feet of Vishnu. And this Puggle, crazy disciple of mine, I gave him this boon, whoever's head he will touch with his finger will crack. Now he wants to touch my head. So Vishnu, who can also be very clever and deceitful when necessary, he engages this Brikasura in some dialogue. And says, you know, Mahadev, we don't know. He's Bhog Shiv, Tyag Shiv, Bhakta Shiv. Who knows who you were dealing with? Are you sure this that it even works? And he starts thinking, yeah, actually, I don't really know. So Vishnu said, if you really want to know if it works, try it on yourself. So he goes, oh, why didn't I think of that? So Mahadev, she was saying, why do I get Puggle disciples like this? Because you're Ashutosh, you're merciful to everyone, he's pleased in a very simple way. But I told, as he's also can get riled easily. But so Guru Maharaj tells us, as we hear, some things he says are repeatedly difficult to grasp. You know, Guru Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Dham Tattva, Nam Tattva. All these things are mysterious. Sometimes a little bit of understanding is given and then we try to fix that or develop it and vanishes. Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks of this in his song, Vichakshana Korite Hoy Anki Agochar. Like lightning, there may be some momentary illumination, but if we try to fix it, vanishes. So these things are mysterious, but included are also is Shiva Tattva, because he's appearing in different positions. His unique position allows him to do this. Also to be a mediator between the spiritual and the mundane. So his position is very special and unique. Right? So we have, according to Guru Maharaj, Bhog Shiv, the master of Maya. Tyag Shiv means Jnana Misra Bhakti, representation, above the mundane but just below the spiritual. And Bhakta Shiv, of the spiritual world, the devotee, even into the highest position. We may think that by the grace of our Guru Varga, so much has been high, confidential information has been extended to us. But we should be very cautious when we think of the super servitors, to not forget whatever we may have been exposed to, they know certainly. So, and on the one hand, in Vrindavan, we're told sometimes when Krishna comes back at the end of the day, herding the cows, he's with Balaram and the cowherd boys. Barha pidam natabara bapu karneo karnikaram bibrad basa kanaka kapisam bhai jayantim chamalam randran venurdhaya sudhaya puryan gopa vrinde vrindaranyam swapara ramanam pravishad gita kirti. They're playing their flute, singing, dancing, joy when they go to the forest and when they return from the forest. And it's mentioned that sometimes on the sideline are Brahma, Shiva, different demigods. They want to have a glimpse of Krishna at the end of the day. But they're in they've come in their position, so the interaction is not so intimate. And also Mother Yashoda is thinking, it's time for Krishna to eat. All these gods have assembled here, they're delaying him, delaying his meal. Right? So they play that role even in the spiritual world. There's some necessity for Brahma and Shiva and Saraswati and others, although they're of the Dibya character. But they also want to participate in the pastimes in an intimate way. So we hear of Gopeshwar, that Shiva in Vrindavan takes this position as the like guard of all the gopis, their protector. And we hear in Chaitanyastakam of Srila Rupa Goswami, Sado pasya sriman drita manuja kaye pranayitam vahad bir girvane girisha parameshti prabrittibhi shabhaktevya sudham nijabhajanam upadisham mudram upadishan satchetanna kime punarapidashor yasyati padam. That Girish, that's a name, Giri Isha, a name of Shiva. Parameshti means Brahma. That sometimes to have a glimpse of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and witness his divine pastimes, that they're Drita Manuja Kaye Pranay. They're taking human forms, disguising themselves as human beings. And what is the gift they're coming with? Pranaya, their love and affection. So they're coming in that way. We're also told in Chaitanya Bhagavat that as Advaita Acharya is sometimes described as Mahavishnu, because there's an intimate connection between Mahavishnu and Shambhu, or Shiva's expansion, that he's also taken to be an avatar of Shiva. In the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, when he is traveling around South India, he also visits a place where Shiva and Parvati appear as a Brahmana and his wife. And it's told that Mahaprabhu and Shiva have a few days of intimate, confidential talks that are beyond description and understanding. So they're only mentioned there, but not in any great detail. And we know that His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj, had some special affinity for Shiva near his birthplace. Where is Bururaj, the town? Jamalpur. And Guru Maharaj, did he go and offer lotus flower to Lord Shiva? And we've seen called Buro, this means beneath the earth. That's where the Shiva Lingam is, maybe like 2 meters below the earth. And some mystical self-manifested Shiva Lingam there. Srila Guru Maharaj going to offer lotus flowers. It may be there where he had some the Virat Rupa became impressed upon him. And Srila Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, before he was born, his parents were praying to Shiva that if by his mercy he would send a son to them. This is their heartfelt, earnest prayer. Please give us a son. And the inspiration came to them from Shiva that I will give you a son, but who's one of my own, but when he's 17, he'll have to take sannyas. So there's a type of sannyas in Bengal called Shiva sannyas, where I forget how long it lasts, like a month on a lunar calendar. Is it a fortnight or a month? 15 days. Well, the king of Thailand, he was a monk for 2 weeks also. But, so they're thinking, oh, yes, then he'll take that Shiva sannyas, like, is current in our society. We're okay with that. But I heard Gurudev say this, perhaps in London. He said, they did not know it would be forever. And Guru Maharaj said, it's that because Srila Gurudev possesses like mystic power, Srila Guru Maharaj would say, I think Shiva sent one of his own men. And some people, they're telling son of Shiva, this type of intimacy. And certainly, under all circumstances, Srila Gurudev maintained this great affinity and affection for Shiva. And at last, a Sadashiva, Gangadhar Sadashiva Mandir was constructed on the banks of Govinda Kunda in Navadvip. And Srila Gurudev, on his daily parikrama of the mat, would go there and happily give his dandavats. And so it's of peculiar interest in the Sanatana Goswami's commentary on the Brihad Bhagavatamritam, his own work, when he's discussing Namaparad, that we're told from one point of view not to exalt the demigods, including Shiva, on the level of Krishna, And then we're told, he says in the same breath, not to think of him as any less than Krishna. So it's something mysteriously wonderful. And I've seen near the Dum Dum Park Mat, 10 number tank, there's a pond there. And then there's this, not exactly river bank, but for the sake of this talk, we say river bank. There are houses of rickshawwalas and their wives and children. And on this day, the children, the little boys, they dress like Shiva and they carry tridents around and they go and play. Like they play din-din drums and they dance madly and they're very happy to have some Shiva bhav because he's very dear to all the people there. So, and of course most dear to Krishna, Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. That's mentioned in the pages of the Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Anything else?
It's also Chinese New Year.
Oh yeah.
And your the Chinese devotees and your disciples in China are asking for your special blessings upon them.
How do you say it? Happy Shinyan. What is it? Happy New Year? Shinyan Kuai Le. Shinyan Kuai Le to everyone. Well, we know these ancient cultures, India and China, and at this time, one thing we like to see, well, say at this time they're wishing luck, good health, prosperity, good fortune, all of these things. And we wish that for everyone, but we're reminded in the pages of the Bhagavatam, it says, Kamasya nendriya priti labho jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa narto yasceha karmabhi. What is all of this meant for? This longevity, health, prosperity, all of these things. Jivasya tattva jigyasa. To inquire about our inner necessity. We have external necessities, and we wish that everyone will have a good material situation that will be conducive for spiritual culture. But that's what the Bhagavatam is telling us. Really, we want all of these things so that we'll be capable of engaging in internal culture. Think of the verse, perhaps it's, there's Kulashekar and Jamunacharya. But it says, when the end of life comes, the situation is so disturbing, mentally, physically, and otherwise. It says, I don't know if I'll be able to remember you at that time. What is it? Bhavantam evanu charantana prahari shami sanata jiva. Krishna tvadiya padapanga jabanjarantam addeva veshatume manasa raja hangsa prana prayama samaye kapabatta pitte kantavaro danavido smaranam kutaste. That final moment will be so difficult. Told in Bhagavad Gita, yan yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajitante kalevaram. An important time, but maybe I won't be able to remember you at that time. So now, while I'm in relatively good health, please let me remember you at this moment. So my wish for everyone, while everyone is in relatively good health and prosperity, now remember Krishna, worship Krishna, chant Krishna's name, serve Krishna's devotees. Don't, trust no future, however pleasant. Guru Maharaj liked to quote this English poetry. Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present. Heart within and God overhead. And he would use that in parallel to the Rig Veda mantra, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pasyanti Suraya Daviva Chakshuratatam Vishnur Yad Mama. That let's see the divine lotus feet of the Lord, they're like as illuminating as the sun in the sky, and whatever activities we may do in life, let them be informed by the illumination of Krishna conception, which descends into this plane primarily through his devotees. So we're happy that so many Chinese devotees could come here and we can celebrate this day together. I don't know if there's any fireworks. Maybe not, but that we use the conch shell. The fireworks are meant to make the inauspicious spirits leave. We have the conch shell and the kirtan for the same purpose. But, Jivasya tattva jigyasa. That's why we want to have life, health, prosperity, so that all of that can be connected and dedicated to the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga. Yes.
Our devotees who are in Cambodia, they met our guest who came to visit today.
Oh, really?
Did you say Josh? Joshua's his name. And he has a question.
So our Cambodia man, he left yesterday. Today, okay. Yes, Joshua.
I just had I think it was a few days ago that the Islamic State killed or beheaded some 20 Coptic Christians.
Hare Krishna.
And I was wondering, for the families who've just experienced these events, what you would advise them to do in that situation where they've appear to have lost a family member due to such senseless violence?
Well, yes, as you say, senseless. There's, on a superficial level, there's nothing that can be said to assuage someone's grief in a situation like that. Words are insufficient. But sometimes people will say, what is the philosophy has no, it's not useful. It's interesting, but it's not useful or practical in the world. Right? And you can make a case for that in different ways, occupationally and otherwise. But when it comes to dealing with death, at that time, philosophy shows some value. So, on one hand, we're reminded we live in a world where something like this is possible. So there will be people who will say, so we've got to change the world. Right? That is to misunderstand what this world is. We're living in the world of exploitation. Right? and so-called civilized societies, they try to keep exploitation at a manageable level, or something, the consensus everyone agrees on. All right, within this parameter, it's acceptable or unacceptable, right? Even there were codes of war. What's allowable, what's not allowable, especially when we hear of ancient times, where there were some codes dictating the behavior of warriors. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Arjuna, they're having a discussion, and sometimes Krishna will refer to Arjuna as a Kshatriya in terms of his occupational dharma, and what's appropriate behavior, what's inappropriate. But not only are we living in the world of exploitation, but at a time which is known as the Kali Yuga, which is the world of exploitation at its worst. Right? As bad as it is, this is the world of exploitation at its worst. So, what does that mean? In Darwinian language, survival of the fittest. And we know that fittest doesn't necessarily imply good. Just, the strong exploiting the weak. Again, exploitation. In the language of the Bhagavatam, it says, Jivasya jivo jivasya jivanam. One living entity, one living being is living at the expense of another. So, philosophical understanding tells us this is the nature of the very world that we live in. And despite all efforts to the contrary, to educate people, to make them gentle, kind, loving, etc. It's 2015 and heinous activities are going on. And not only are they going on, but they're going on in the name of divinity, which makes it somehow even more egregious. Again, we look in the Bhagavad Gita in the 17th chapter, the chapter called The Divisions of Faith. And it tells us religion, there's the highest, means nirguna, purely transcendental, but then there's religion that's been influenced by the mundane. And the mundane in three types: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So as we told that Brikasura story, he's tearing his flesh and throwing it into the fire. That's not a proper offering. It's not the proper way to do austerities. He's mad. Right? It's some perverted reflection of a spiritual offering or a ritual. So we can only take it that this is an extreme perversion of religion. It's not, in fact, religion. This is not the will of God in any pure sense. Although in the background of everything, one could make an argument. They say not a blade of grass moves without the will of God. So why are horrible things allowed? That becomes a subject. Sometimes it's a cause of loss of faith. Something extreme happens in somebody, they say, how can God allow these things? Right? From a strictly Vedantic, theistic point of view, you would have to say, how can God not? If we have free will, then that includes the abuse of free will. It can't only be one way, otherwise there's no freedom involved. When Gandhi was arguing in favor of Indian independence, the British, one of their counter-arguments was, India, you're not fit for self-rule. You can't handle freedom or independence. So you know, a kind, what do you call it? Condescending. You know, you won't be able to handle freedom. And his point at the time, he said, freedom means the right to do wrong. That must be included. So from a strictly theistic point of view, how can God allow this? How can he not? If we're to have free will, then part in the exercise and abuse of free will is to do unthinkable, heinous activities. Someone wrote a book once with the title, "Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People?" Right? Why do bad things happen to good people? I didn't read the book, but I know the answer from our perspective. It's because you don't need there's a one-word answer to that question, and it's karma. Whatever happens in this world, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So although it may seem cruel on the surface, still, if you're theistically minded and you say, not a blade of grass moves without the will of God, there's karma, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So there's something inconceivable to us at present in the past. It cannot just be random, anything, nothing can be accidental. So it doesn't mean what they do is deserved in this lifetime. We see many things in this lifetime, and this points to past lives, that there's nothing observable in this life that warrants this kind of thing. That's one of the reasons it's so outrageous. But from a impartial analysis, whether from a scientific point of view, every action equal and opposite reaction, or from a Vedantic philosophical point of view, karma, something in the past put people in such an inauspicious position, individually and collectively. So, horrible events, for some people, it's an excuse to abandon their faith, right? To stop believing. And that's indirectly to blame God. God could have intervened, someone might say. He could have stopped this. This comes up with the Holocaust also. How could he allow this? Even my own grandmother, she had 5 sons and 1 daughter. And the daughter died when she was 16. So this damaged or destroyed her faith for so many years. She could not understand. And her way of thinking was, why would God take away my only daughter at such a young age? This is intolerable to me. So it is indirectly to put the blame on God for what in fact is the blame is because on man or people, the exercise of their free will, the abuse of free will has brought this about. So, in America recently, some people of the Muslim faith were killed, and in a very senseless way also. But one of their relatives surprisingly spun this in another direction, saying, I know how good these people are. I can only think they're, in a higher position with God. Whether he felt forced to say that or compelled to say that for some reason or another, this was expressed by one of the brothers of the victims. So whether that's heartfelt or otherwise, I'm not to judge. But what I can say is that when nothing will immediately bring any relief, but when time separates a little bit and people start looking deep into the background of all of this, it may end up being a cause for increased faith as opposed to abandoning faith. They think, yes, this is the nature of this world. These kind of things are happening. So why should we seek our fortune in this particular world? If anything, it's it goads one to think about a world that is not ruled by so cruelly. Right. So, we were speaking recently of this in the Vaikuntya Pritivyadi Sakala Chenmoy. The nature of the spiritual world is the very soil has your interest at heart. There's such a plane exists, we find from the scriptures, that there's a world where the soil has your interest at heart and everyone traversing that soil has your interest at heart. And where do we live at present? In a plane where we're suspicious of, if not everyone, many. And the very environment may at times be our enemy. So to try and make this world, the spiritual world, is a futile endeavor. This is the world of exploitation, where it has these rules. One living entity living at the expense of another, one exploiting another. It's always been that way. It's that way now, and it will continue to be that way. So, and otherwise known as the world of mortality. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, Anityam asukam lokam. Even if you could adjust everything in your favor for some time, everything's sort of going your way, it's still temporary. Sooner or later, you'll have to give it up. You cannot remain here. Either voluntarily or otherwise, you have to leave this plane. It's the world of mortality. So, our Guru Maharaj like to quote this Vedic aphorism that says, Shrinvantu vishe amritasya putra. It says, mrityu means death in Sanskrit, but the word amrita means nectar, but it also means like the amrita, deathless, the nectar of immortality. So it says, Shrinvantu vishe amritasya putra. Putra means children. The Vedas are saying, you're children of the nectar world. You're eternal children of the nectar world. So please listen very carefully to these spiritual instructions. Right now you're living in the world of mortality. Sooner or later you'll have to leave it. We were talking of Srila Govinda Maharaj in relation to Shiva earlier. And he said when he was in his village, in his hometown in India, Bamanpur, or Brahmanpur would have been the original name, that he was very happy in his life. He said, I loved everybody and everybody loved me. He said, and not only human beings, but the animals, the insects, the environment. And he said, even the rickshawwalas, as if it was like a gradation. He said, I loved everyone, everyone loved me. Then Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he sent one of his preachers to his town. And Srila Govinda Maharaj, who's known for his sense of humor as a method of teaching, he said, and he came to my happy village life talking this nonsense. The nonsense was the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. He said, talking this nonsense. Your mother is nothing, your father is nothing, this world is nothing, you'll have to give it up and leave it. And he said, but that nonsense, he said, struck my heart. And I, as happy as I was in my own situation, I could not deny the truth of what he was saying. Right? So again, I don't mean to be insensitive, but now we're having a philosophical talk. So, and we're told, how do sadhus help us? Spiritual, they deliver the naked truth sometimes in language that's not entirely pleasant or what we thought we were going to hear. So I say, when some time passes and we look at things in a more philosophical sense, we'll realize this world is not permanent. And that's not an exclusively religious idea, but science says it too. You know, if you, not every, but you have different groups of scientists giving different expiration dates for the world, right? They're all in consensus that it vanishes after some time, right? But some will say, you know, if you use power like 10 to the 12th power years, 10 to the 16th, or, you know, they give different dates. But they're all in agreement that the days of this whole world and everything in it are numbered. It means all these cities, these countries, these buildings we make, there will be a point where it will all vanish. No more New York, Chiang Mai, Moscow, Shenzhen, you know, India, all of these things, it will all vanish. The Gita says, Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. It vanishes and then it springs up again. They've got, in Vedantic philosophy, this cycle where it manifests for some time, then it's withdrawn, and then it appears again. You know, to be at least on somewhat of a hopeful note. You'll get another opportunity. Their relatives will get another opportunity. This life is not all in all. That's one thing we learn from that. In fact, we learn from the Vedas, you know, innumerable births, opportunities you get. That's not going to make somebody feel good on day one, but after some time, understanding the eternality of the soul may give some relief to grief. Krishna tells Arjuna, don't grieve for the body in any circumstance. The soul is eternal. It withstands the death of the body. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a very famous sloka there. It says, Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanam jara. What evidence do we have within our experience that supports this idea? It's interesting that Krishna, and as Prabhupada said sometimes, if you want to understand Bhagavad Gita, you have to at least theoretically accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But this is a great, if you just theoretically accept that, you're halfway there. Anyway, so he who could give some extremely complicated, detailed description of this, uses very simple examples, and even things that are within our experience. So here, he wants to convey to us that the soul can withstand the death of the body. Right? Is there anything locally that can help me grasp this concept? And he said, yes. You were an embryo within the womb of your mother. You came out as a baby, then you were a toddler, a child, a teenager, a young adult. You've gone through all these stages of bodily existence. We used to hear, I don't know if they still say it, but they would say the body, if you factor in all the cellular change, it changes every 7 years or so. Right? But he's saying the soul is withstanding this change of body. It's that same person who was in the body of the embryo, that's in the body of the toddler, the child, the young teenager, young adult, etc. Then here comes the leap. Tata dehantara prapti dhiras tatra namuyati. At the time of death, you get another body based upon what you've done in this life. If you've lived a good life, done well, to others and developed yourself internally, spiritually, and you've minimized your exploitation, then you're likely to ascend, to go up into a higher position. Can also descend into a lower position. That's also possible for human beings. Animals, we're told, they're just going to the next level up. They're acting on the basis of acquired instinct. Right? On the basis of past misuse of free will, souls descended into lower species, now will on this like Ferris wheel, like arc, will go up to higher species, right? Where the free will is reclaimed. When it's misused, you enter a situation where there's less capacity to express free will. Right? Like we have a dog here. He can only behave like a dog. He doesn't have an option. We have a cat too. Can only behave like a cat. Not the little things they do that charm human beings. I'm talking, you know, the dog has no, he's going to be like that. Like I say, you put a dog, the famous example, put a dog on a throne, right? With a crown, everything, scepter, and then throw a shoe. What's going to happen? You know? So, but a human being can act like, you know, a gentleman or an animal. Right? So when you have the full spectral range for expressing free will, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Back to the original point. But still, there's hope is given to us, particularly in the pages of Bhagavad Gita. If you look in the second chapter there, you'll see the subject of the eternality of the soul is being presented by Krishna in a variety of ways to assure Arjuna that the soul is eternal and it's only death is the death of the body, of the gross body. Gross body, subtle body. Right? The subtle body, the soul is transferred to another body. So, that is supposed to have the effect upon us of making us valuably use our present time, which I was alluding to before, in regard to like the Chinese New Year, where the blessing or benediction, the well wishes are for luck, health, longevity, prosperity, happiness. But what does that mean in a world that's got an expiration date written on it, either for the whole thing or for us individually? Then that underscores the importance of the short time that we do have, how to spend that time, and considering that a certain amount of our time is spent in sleeping or addressing bodily necessities, whenever it becomes an even narrower window of opportunity for internal culture, for spiritual culture. So, in the big picture, we will know that that opportunity will come again. Right? Repeatedly, we get this opportunity. By the mercy of Krishna, the mercy of God, the opportunity to withdraw from the world of exploitation and all its ugliness and brutality, and through love and devotion enter the land of dedication. That opportunity will come. Hare Krishna. Any other question?
Ajita Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
What means lost servant?
Lost
What
servant?
does it mean?
Well, I like to think that when we were making the first book for Srila Guru Maharaj, and he gave this title, The Search for Sri Krishna, Reality of the Beautiful. And so we were very happy with that, and he gave some more detail with it. But then we wanted to make a book about Guru. Everyone is eager to understand so much about Guru and so many descriptions there in the scriptures and otherwise. So we thought, compile everything Guru Maharaj has said on this subject, structure it, and he gave the title, Sri Guru and His Grace. So we're even more happy with that. Then his favorite subject, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And again, original, fresh thinking. How is he expressing? It started off as Shikshastakam, the instructions of Mahaprabhu, 8. But he said, how are they coming out? Like volcanic eruptions of the heart. So golden volcano, divine lava. The streaming divine lava from the heart of the golden volcano, Shikshastakam. So then we got golden volcano of divine love. And Gurudev told, they're like deities. And when we thought more about it, we thought, yeah, like Krishna, and then Guru Radharani and Mahaprabhu, like Guru Gauranga, Radha Govinda. But then what would the next book be? And Guru Maharaj said, well, continuing this search theme, as we are searching for Krishna, he said, Krishna is also, I mean, we have, the way that book is structured, it culminates in Krishna as Mahaprabhu, the supreme positive in the guise of the supreme negative, searching himself. Atma Siddha Savalila Purna Sokya Lakshanam, Prema Damadeva Stotram conclusion. The ultimate expression of the highest reality. But here Guru Maharaj said, as the devotees, they're searching for Krishna. He said, Krishna is also searching for his servants. And then he said, but it is a loving search. He is searching for his lost servants, but it is a loving search. So then he came with loving search for the lost servant. So this is a somewhat mystical topic, because although jivas were told Krishnera tatasta shakti beda bed prakash, they're situated in the margin. Tatasta necessarily means on the edge, on the outskirts of the Swarup Shakti. Only from that position is this deviation and subsequent adaptability to the mundane possible. But really, Mahaprabhu's declared these lost people, Jive Swarupai Krishnera Nityadas, they're actually eternal servants of Krishna. So this is really their Swarup Muktir Hedvanyata Rupam Swarupena Vivastiti, their internal identity, their internal form as expressed inward, but having Bayam Ditiya Binibeshi Tatshad Viparayo Smriti, forgetful of this servitor identity and service potential, reality potential, they become outer directed toward the mundane, envisioning themselves as masters. On the theme of Shiva, he's the master of Maya. Jivas become slaves of Maya, enslaved by Maya, all the while envisioning themselves, fantasizing about the master position and trying to establish an egocentric existence, expanding the range, the circumference of their exploiting capability in this world. You know, I am Ozymandias, look upon my kingdom, ye mighty, in despair. And Shelley, I think it's Shelley, this poem about Ramses. Well, it could be 1, 2, 3, whichever one it was. Egyptian king. I met a traveler from an ancient land. He told me some peculiar sight he sees. What is that? There's a broken statue from long ago that was commissioned to celebrate the glories of a particular king. He said, but it's broken. So he said, the king's head is like half covered in the sand, and he's saying, whoever the sculptor was, he really captured the essence of this man. He said, there's a sneer on his face, and that's broken, and he's broken like at the waist, at the knees. But the inscription can still be seen at the base of the statue, and it says, I am Ozymandias, king of kings. Look upon my kingdom, ye mighty, in despair. He said, and the irony of this is that as you look, all you see are desert sand in all direction. His kingdom was long ago finished. Like we're saying of this world, Bhutva, gone. Right? So the lost servant, everyone is a lost servant. They have this servitor potential. We're told when the devotee feeling some sadness for the plight of the souls of this world, said, I'm just feeling sad for the innocent people of this world. And Guru Maharaj surprised everyone by saying, there are no innocent people. We have all betrayed our Lord. That's why we're in this world to begin with. The innocent do not come into the world of exploitation. We're in this world because we're exercising our right, will, and tendency for self-establishment and exploitation. That's why we're here. So, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. If by causeless good fortune we come in connection with an authorized agent of the Absolute, right? An agent of divinity, and some divine mercy descending in this plane of exploitation, if we come in connection with the agent of the Lord, by their grace, grace descended, grace extended, they can reawaken our servitor identity. So that is lost servant. Loving search for the lost servant. By inconceivable, causeless mercy, Krishna's agents are descended in this world, moving in this plane, extending good fortune to others. Bhagyavan Jeev. Fortunate jivas get their connection. And then move from an egocentric position to a theocentric position, a Krishna and Guru-centric position, to withdraw from the plane of exploitation and under the guidance of Guru and Vaishnav, engage in acts of devotion, dedication. Hare Krishna.